The first time I took a figure drawing class, my teacher handed out to each student one piece of paper, and it had, I think, 15 instructional information about how to draw figures. And I kept that piece of paper for years. These short instructional statements were so useful to me that really I could have just taken it from there. You could have handed me that piece of paper, sent me off into the wilderness, and I could have, from then on, I could have everything I really needed to continue to learn how to make art. And what I later learned is that in other disciplines, in my case in writing fiction and writing poetry, and then you name it, video work, photography, animation, I realized that there were some instructional statements that were particularly powerful in not just teaching you how to practice these arts, but that they opened up a door to learning. You could continue to use these statements to push forward and learn on your own. One statement I'm thinking of is work the entire canvas. That's it. That was the entire instruction right there. And the reason this was so useful to me is that it opened up a lot. You could add on new statements that have to do with learning how to paint better. So you can take what you've learned in one art form and use it to improve another art form. That statement, work the entire canvas, I'm still using it. I'm not painting, I haven't painted for years, but I am still using that in my writing. I'll describe to you about how to use it in painting, and I know that you'll be able to automatically equate it to what it means to writing. So in painting, what it is basically is you don't spend too much time on any one part of the canvas. You continue to work the entire one. You don't neglect the background in order to only work on the subject. If you're painting a portrait, the rest of the canvas, it's not going to be white space around the person you're painting. You want to include everything that falls within that frame and to work every area of it equally. Spend as much time and keep moving. That's one thing, is you can kind of putter around on one little area for a few seconds, but then move to another random area and keep moving around, and you kind of create this sort of, in painting, I did it randomly, where I was like, okay, just, pin the tail on the donkey, choose the next random spot, and start working there for a few seconds, and when you're in that environment, when you're practicing this approach, you start to discover that this certain way of painting affords you, then you realize you're really able to do a lot more than you can do otherwise. One thing it does is it keeps you in a it makes part of your discipline to stay loose, to stay loosened up and not locking in on anything. So you still need to afford yourself the room to make mistakes, because you're not refining, you're not locking down on anything. You have to keep moving. And in this way, this makes the experience much more like what it would be to play an instrument. When you're improvising, playing music, it's impossible for you to go back and correct what you just did. You just have to let it go and keep going. And you have to stay loose. You have to think of the next idea, the next action, the next artistic expression, and if there's something about it that is not quite congealed yet, just keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. And when working with it on the canvas, if you've decided to do it that way every time you paint, then you make staying loose, staying flexible, staying non-critical and open a constant part of your artwork. I've talked to a lot of musicians, I've talked to a lot of writers. I've never known a musician to tell me that they have the equivalent of a writer's block. That may happen, I'm just saying that I hardly ever hear about that. And I think that the reason is that it's just impossible for them. Besides the fact of being able to dub and go back and work with recordings, after you play a note, it's gone. You have to let it go and keep moving. I think all artists should pay as much attention to how they do their art as people who do karate and other martial art pay attention to how they execute the next attack. If you incorporate, if every time you go to write, paint, you decide ahead of time, I'm going to do this a certain way, and it's more about the way that you do it than what you're actually doing. Because if if someone who's practicing a martial art, they pay at least 50% attention to exactly how they're going to go about executing each of these moves. It's not all about learning all the moves. It isn't all about what the results are. It's about how excellent you are at your approach, and so when you decide ahead of time, when I go to write, I'm going to write this way, and it isn't so much about the outcome you have from your writing, it's about how you decide ahead of time to execute your writing. Now, I've been fortunate in that I've never gotten writer's block, and so I can't say for certain why, and I do know that of all the writers I talk to, one thing that I hear so often, and this is a real issue, is writer's block, getting writer's block. And I'm wondering, because I never really wanted to be a writer. I always thought of myself as a painter, and now I don't even paint anymore because I'm writing all the time. And so I kind of think of, well, here's how I do it. And one thing is that when I felt the need to write and I started writing, I took the things I had learned in painting, and that's how I started writing. And so I worked the entire canvas. And so one thing I would do is it's sort of like skim writing. You're writing along, you decide ahead of time, okay, I'm just going to write an outline. Working the entire canvas, now a canvas is two-dimensional. Now, you could think of a work of writing as one-dimensional. It has a beginning and an end, and it's linear, and you go down the line. And so instead of working the entire canvas, what I do is I start at the beginning and I skim along, and I work and work and work in a way I've decided ahead of time to work on it until I get to the end. When I get to the end, I go right back to the beginning again. I finished it. I did it from page 1 to the end. I finished that years ago, and it exists. It exists in. You could think of it in a way as a completed form. It is a completed story. It's also a mess. It's. But the thing is I've been able to go down that line again and again and again, and each time increase the resolution and clean things up and all of that, but every time not getting stuck in one place. And what I think kept me from getting writer's block is that when I did that, when I laid down the initial track, I knew I was making a mess of it. I knew that I was doing it incorrectly the whole time, but I just pushed through. And once you have that story, then you have what is the makings of, you have the track laid. Then in a way you can't get writer's block because you're on chapter 3 and you'll be working on a conversation 2 of your characters are having, and instead of getting stumped, well, what do I do now? you have a story to work on. You know what you're going to do next. Next you're going to work on what comes after that. I could not emphasize enough how messes and incomplete work and work that is full of problems and inconsistencies and out of focus and ill-formed and not fully formed, all of this is worth more to the artist than anything on earth. Diamonds and gold mean nothing compared to this kind of material when we're looking at it. And yes, I can remember when looking at these messes was discouraging to me, but after a while recognizing it, that this is exactly what we need as artists. We need to create these messes to work on and to work the entire canvas and be patient and realize that as we work our alchemy on these messes, then the form starts to take shape. Then the resolution of the story starts to come out. Then the characters in the story start to appear to live on their own. An important question to ask: if you had a writing session for an hour, after that hour is over, don't ask yourself, what did I accomplish? What did I do? Ask yourself, was I working the entire canvas? And that is the focus. It's the approach that is more important than all the other goals that we attach to being an artist. Imagine that you're only given a certain amount of time before you have to move on and keep moving. Now, in that class that I took, the teacher would walk around and time and again the teacher would say, okay, well, you've move on to a different part. You need to work more on the background, and so here was this actual you need to keep moving factor in doing the artwork. And if you just think of it like, okay, I'm going to work on this character for 10 minutes and then I need to move on. In that way, after a while it becomes habit. Just to make it clear that I am not describing the right way to do art. Now, if I were to write a poem, I could spend all day working on that one poem. It might be 20 words, but I could completely and enjoy and feel creative and feel plugged in to work on that poem. So essentially I'm doing the opposite of what I just described. So but I'm still deciding ahead of time exactly what the nature of my execution is going to be. I'm still deciding. I'm still making art like a meditation. I am. It is not the what, it is the how, and you use these as ways of increasing your power as an artist. The reality of painting is that when you first start painting, paint a line from one end of the canvas to the other, just to break up the space, just to the blank nature of that painting, and keep working. It is going to be a mess. There is no way around it. You can't. You have. That's what you have to do. Up towards the very end of working on a work of art, that is what you are doing. That is how you are creating. Is making a mess. And when I was painting, I found myself constantly telling myself, "This is good. These mistakes are good. This is how creation works. Is that it's just the nature of incarnating. What's in here, getting it out of here. That is how it gets out here, is as mistakes and ill-formed and not fully formed and needing corrections and needing to have work done on it. And instead of it creating a negative feedback loop, think of it as potential. This is you need to recognize that it doesn't make you a bad artist. This is just the way it is done. And you get more and more often emotionally, you never think of these. They're not even mistakes as in terms of how the world thinks of the word mistake. For the most part, these are something very different. These are the way that things become formed as you create them. And in your writing, as you roll along, you keep going. You continually tell yourself, I know that needs more work, but I'm going to keep moving because I also need to work the entire story. I need to make sure that I don't neglect parts of the story. I need to make sure that I don't get stuck. I need to make sure that as I'm working on one character, and as I move to the next scene, yes, I realize that the character I finished working on is inadequate, but I'm going to keep moving and I'm not going to worry about it because I'll know that I will go back to that again. I will do another scan through the story and relax and realize that it's going to be imperfect up until a point where I think, this is good enough. This is good. People will be able to enjoy the story. I've also talked to a lot of people who made the first few steps into making art an important part of their life, and again, I get the idea that people have good ideas for a story, and then when they write it, they realize what a juggernaut it can be. They realize that as they become more educated about what good writing is and what good communication is, and the user experience, the way you want to all the different dimensions of what make good writing can be so overwhelming that I think that probably countless really excellent stories got lost because a lot of people looked at it and their impression was, oh, I'm not a good writer. This is just a huge mess. And I think one reason that there are some of us that continue to do art is that we don't see it the way if you're in a lot of different forms of life, it's good to recognize a mess, but in artwork it's a very different thing. With painting and writing, your initial run through, you basically create a huge mess. You write story from beginning to end, and it's a tangled mess. The entire thing is a complete catastrophe that you just created. When I was painting, one thing that I emotionally learned that made me react very differently to this situation over time was that, okay, it happened on canvas too. The canvas became, a plate of spaghetti, just a total mess, tangled, awful. But as I worked, then there was no getting around it. Then as you refine and you correct and you're covering up that mess. And after a while, emotionally, when I saw the catastrophe, I reacted to it differently. This is pure potential. This is also a lot of loose ends. So this is an environment of possibility. As you do refine your story and make it better, you're also reducing the possibilities, and which is fine, because then you can go on to the next story and then you're opened up to a whole new world of possibility. But after a while, I really missed on the canvas seeing the earlier stages. One of my all-time favorite painters is Jean-Michel Basquiat. Even if you're only interested in writing, it'll give you a visual about how to have a different outlook on your writing. I think all painters they understand the understructure of their painting, and they sort of wish that didn't get covered up. And one thing I really like about Jean-Michel Basquiat is that he left those earlier stages uncovered and sort of made them into their own thing, and recognized, and their potential became what he was showing. And appreciating how loose a canvas can be. Keep in mind how this can change your attitude towards writing. To really discover the potential of what I'm talking about is to really decide, yes, I will work the entire canvas. Yes, this is very important. If you do it halfway, you're not going to realize even a quarter of what this can do for your writing. But if you really decide, okay, I'm working on my story, I'm going to, in the first draft, I'm just about completing the story and not worrying about, I know as I go along, I'm like a musician. I know that I just made a mistake. Got to keep moving. I know that I just made a mistake. Got to keep moving. And a musician has to constantly let go of those notes, and it gets to a point where the musician doesn't even worry about it. It's just something they have to do. And if a writer does the same thing, if they just constantly have to let go of what they just wrote and keep moving, they always have the opportunity when they get to the end that you can take that put yourself at the very beginning, your little figurine, put them at the beginning and start all over again. And if you keep up this routine, this discipline, and think of it like a martial art, think of it like a meditation, and I guarantee you it's me personally, if it's one of the greatest approaches to writing I have ever found. Remember, as the more that it becomes habit, then you won't even think about it anymore. It'll be part of your style as an artist. So as what you can do this exercise. Over the course of a week, choose 5 days. And the first day, brainstorm for 15 minutes and just write and write and write. Don't stop writing. Just write and write and write. And the next day, go back and rewrite what you wrote. Maybe make it only for 3 minutes because you'll be rewriting it each day. And then the next day rewrite that, and the next day, and then you'll start to realize, wow, I've stepped into a whole new environment of making art. It's good to, for a year, make this a very important part of your artwork. Write down on a piece of paper, work the entire canvas without stopping. Tape it up where you can see it every time you go to work. Please understand that there are benefits to this technique that I can't describe to you. I can try to describe to you some of the things I've discovered, but it's just, you just have to do it. You have to practice this technique to realize the benefits, and in all likelihood you're going to discover some things that every other artist on earth hasn't discovered. As an exercise, the next time you write, go ahead and remember, every artist is essentially a dreamer, but the artist also needs the interdisciplinarian, which is the alter ego of the artist and the antithesis of sort of the way the artist feels and behaves. But we need that interdisciplinarian. So your interdisciplinarian will decide the time frame, will say, okay, you will do art for an hour, chop chop, do it. And for that next hour, imagine put a face on your interdisciplinarian, and if you spend too much time on one part of your writing, one particular dialogue, just imagine that the interdisciplinarian stepping in and saying, oh, you got to keep moving, down the page, onto the next paragraph, keep moving. You can always return to it later. Being an artist is about continually becoming a better artist, and a big part of that is to become clear about what your approach is. And so, as an exercise, each day say, I am going to work the entire canvas, and if it helps, kind of pretend like it's a martial art. Pretend that you're not just going to do something. You're going to pay attention to your breath while you're doing it. You're going to pay attention to your posture while you're doing it. You're going to pay attention to the way you do it, and decide ahead of time, I'm going to work the entire canvas. I'm going to keep moving. No matter what comes out on the page, I'm going to keep moving, and I will do this for the entire writing session. To everyone who has liked my tutorials and subscribed and left comments, I can't thank you enough. I read all the comments. I thank all of you for the encouragement and the great feedback. I really appreciate it, and I really like the idea that there are so many people that are interested in in my mind, I imagine that new stories that you are the people who are going to bring, some of the next great stories out and get them published. And if this tutorial has given, if you think you have anything to contribute, please leave a comment. To encourage me to make more of these tutorials, please hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. And also, I am posting on my website, solomation.com, the illustrated story I've been working on for years, and the episodes are posted for free. They're illustrations with narration, video format. You can watch them for free. Please tell your friends about my tutorials and about the solomation.com project I'm working on. I hope your writing and painting goes great, and have a good day.